In 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 15 and 17, 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 15 and 17. And this is a story about the prophet and his servant. I'm going to begin with 15. And when the servant of God arose early, and he went out, and there was an army surrounded the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said, "Alas, my master." He says, "Look, there's something going on out here, and you need to know it." And he says, "What shall we do?" And he answered, he says, "Do not fear." That is the first thing to do, is don't fear. Why? Because faith can't work in fear. There is no fear in faith. If you're going to worry, don't pray. And if you're going to pray, don't worry. So he told him, do not fear. He says, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. But his natural eyes seen a great army. Horses snorting, and men on horses, and chariots, and swords, and hatchets, and all of those things for warfare. His natural eyes seen it. But his spiritual eyes could not see. His imagination could not form an image of what was taking place in the realm of the spirit right before his eyes. And look what the prophet says. And Elisha prayed. The prophet prayed. And look what he said. He prayed and said, "Lord," he says, "open his eyes that he might see." Now, you know, that would have sounded real crazy to the servant. I am seeing. I'm telling you what I see. Prophet, what is wrong with you? My eyes don't need to be open. You need to get it straight, prophet, because we're going to be doomed here in a minute. And the prophet says, no. He prayed. God, first of all, the prophet prayed, and I know what he did. I can tell you what he did. He bind that spirit of fear off of him. He just he said, "Lord, I bind the spirit of fear off of my servant so that his spiritual eyes can see." You see, you can't see when you're living in fear. When you're living in fear and dread and worry, "Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do." Well, you know what you're going to have? Just what you can't do. But when your trust is in God, God, I don't know the outcome of this, but I know I'm coming to the other side. I know I'm going to come to the other side. And I know you hold my todays and all of my tomorrows. And I know that there's nothing too hard from you. Oh, great God, I praise you and I love you because you're an awesome God. And I know you promised to deliver me. And you said if I would work out my salvation, you would bring me through. And see, right in the midst of hardship, that's how you have to pray. You have to talk to God that way. You say, "Well, I don't feel like talking to God like that." Well, you can stay in that if you want to. God will let you stay in it as long as you want to. But when you lift up your eyes to the hills from which cometh your help, because your help comes from the Lord. And you have to deliver yourself from fear. And you have to open your mouth and declare that God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And I am in a sound mind. I am walking in faith. I am trusting in God, and he is my deliverer. And I know he will break through my enemy like a breakthrough of water. My God can do all things, and he will do it for me. And that has to be the confession of your mouth and the believing of your heart. You see, you will only say what your heart is full of. You will only say what your heart is full of. If your heart is full of fear and dread and trouble, that's what's going to come. I just don't know. I just don't know. Well, don't nobody know. Don't ask me. I don't know either. If you don't know, I surely don't know. But if you say, "I know God can do all things," I will dance with you, shout with you until victory comes. Are you listening? And so he prayed. He says, "Open his eyes that he might see." That the Lord opened his eyes and the young man saw. He did just what the prophet asked him. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And Elisha said that there are more with us than they are with him. Heaven was open till he could see. The prophet Elijah prayed that the servant's eyes would be open, that he might see. The prophet didn't ask God to give him sight. He didn't ask God to give sight to a blind servant, but that the servant's eyes would supernaturally be open so that he could see. See, the servant wasn't blind, he just couldn't see. You see, God didn't ask, the prophet didn't ask God to open the eyes of a blind man. He just couldn't see. Now, how many times have you gotten into a situation where you just couldn't see it? I'll lift my hands and I'll say, that's me. I know the rest of y'all see everything. But I know I've gotten in situations where I said, God, I just don't see no way out of this. My wife said this morning, we are facing some mountains, but the mountain that we're looking at is greater than the mountains that are facing us. Are you listening to what I'm saying to you? We're looking at the mountain of God.